In the previous video, I suggested that it was possible for, in the case of an oligopolistic market, for the few firms who are in the market to collude with each other. That is, there's an incentive for them to collude with each other. Now, that's likely to occur when there are very few firms in the marketplace, where each firm is producing a very similar product, where each firm has a good degree of knowledge of its rivals, where each firm is able to in some way or other communicate with each other, and where the firms are likely to be engaged in competition or are likely to be exist in the same market over an extended period of time. That is, they are, in a sense, engaged in an infinitely repeated game, so to speak. In that case, there is a great deal of opportunity and therefore temptation to come to either an explicit agreement, if that's legally possible, or at least an implicit agreement. That is, where there's an unspoken understanding of what is in the best interests of the group and what would be harmful to the group, such as, say, for example, a price war. Now, this is not a new idea or a new discovery. It's been around for a very long time. In fact, it's been around since 1776 with one of the, founders of economics, Adam Smith, when he wrote in his book, The Nature and Cause of the Wealth of Nations, that, let me find the quote here, people of the same trade seldom meet together, even for merriment and diversion, but when they do, the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public, or in some contrivance to raise prices. So Adam Smith here is talking about a situation where, if the opportunity arises, business people who are in the same industry may find it in their interests to come to a secret agreement to increase prices so that everyone's charging the same high prices to customers, and so that everyone, or the sellers, the few sellers in the industry, can all make profits, rather than competing with each other and whittling their profits away. This is what we would call price fixing, and it's the first and most obvious kind of collusion that firms can engage in. When firms do engage in collusive behaviour of this kind, then we can say that, and assuming they do it perfectly, the firms end up behaving as if, although they aren't legally speaking this, as if they were one giant firm. Economically speaking, they function as a single firm, each with separate outlets. So if we were to graphically represent this idea, we can show the industry demand curve for the product, whatever it happens to be. Then we can calculate the industry marginal revenue curve. This isn't the marginal revenue curve of any particular firm, it's the marginal revenue curve for the industry as a whole. And we know that the marginal revenue will have double the slope of an average revenue curve or a demand curve. So there we have our marginal revenue curve. Let's say each of the firms in this industry have very low and constant marginal costs of production. This is a little bit unrealistic at very low levels of output, but it's enough to illustrate our point. Now, in that case, we would say that the industry or the firms working together in collusion determine the level of output which would maximize the industry profits. So where will that be? Well, we know we have a rule for determining the optimal output for a firm, and if the firms are all operating together as if they were one giant firm, the same rule applies. That rule is produce up to the point where the revenue from the last unit produced equals the cost of the last unit produced. Or in other words, produce up to the point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Or in graphical terms, where the marginal revenue curve cuts the marginal cost curve. And we can see that that, in this diagram, is at 6 units of output. At that 6 units of output, the firms settle on a price of $13. And all the firms in that industry charge $13 per unit. In this way, the industry as a whole maximizes its profits. It does not mean that each individual firm necessarily maximizes its profits, but it does mean the industry does as a whole. And the firms have to decide how they will divvy up those profits, or more to the point, how they're going to divvy up their customers.